Have you ever watched with a kind of bewildered fascination as those you deemed simple somehow ascend to heights you thought reserved for the cunning and the capable? You whisper of luck, of strange fortune. But what if their rise is no accident, but a meticulously woven snare, and the most unsettling part? What if the threads of that snare pass, unnoticed, through your very own hands? Are you truly observing their ascent, or are you an unwitting architect of their throne? We are taught to value the keen intellect, the steady hand of expertise. Yet how often do these lauded qualities find themselves outmaneuvered, even paralyzed, by a brand of audacity so blatant it masquerades as naivety? Could it be that the very traits you dismiss as flaws, their apparent lack of depth, their shameless self-promotion, their refusal to play by the established rules, are not handicaps at all, but the sharpened edges of a weapon you were never trained to recognize, let alone defend against? Feel that tremor of unease, that flicker of doubt in the bedrock of your assumptions? That is the dawning recognition that the game is played by rules you were never fully taught, or perhaps rules you dismissed as too crude, too beneath the dignity of true ambition. What if these figures, these fools in their gaudy crowns, understand a more primal, more effective language of influence? A language that speaks directly to the hidden levers within you, bypassing your reason and appealing to something far older, far more easily swayed. The truth, often unpalatable, is that mankind is more readily governed by its vanities and its desire for simple narratives than by complex realities. These rising figures, do they not offer you precisely that? A world painted in broad, comforting strokes, where difficult questions have effortless answers, and where their very elevation seems to absolve you of the burden of your own discernment. They do not trick the world, they merely understand how the world and how you wish to be tricked. For the mechanisms they employ are not conjured from dark magic, but drawn from an astute, almost predatory understanding of human nature itself, your nature. And the most potent trick of all is convincing you that you are merely a spectator, when in fact, your silent assent, your diverted gaze, your underestimated judgment, forms the very stage upon which their entire play unfolds. Before we dissect the anatomy of this grand deception, tell me, what is the one foolish tactic you've seen work with alarming success, making you question who the real fool might be? Share your observation. Let the unmasking begin. So, the stage is set, not by them alone, but by a silent contract, a shadowed agreement to which you, perhaps unknowingly, are a party. The fool's ascent is less a testament to their singular genius and more a reflection of a landscape you helped sculpt. Their trickery finds fertile ground, not in barren intellect, but in the rich, often unexamined soil of your own human tendencies. Do you truly believe their power is conjured from nothing, or does it draw sustenance from a wellspring of your own making? Consider the irresistible allure of the simple path, the uncomplicated answer in a world that screams with nuance and demands constant, wearying discernment. The one who wears the mask of the fool offers you this seductive reprieve, a narrative stripped bare of difficulty, a vision so stark it feels like clarity. And do you not, in moments of fatigue or frustration, crave this very simplicity? Is it not a human instinct to seek the shortest distance between a bewildering problem and a comforting solution, however illusory? The labor of critical thought, the weight of holding multiple perspectives, the discomfort of uncertainty, these are heavy burdens. The fool offers to lift them from your shoulders. In exchange for what? Merely your attention, your quiet agreement, your willingness to suspend disbelief for just a moment longer. And in that moment, repeated over time, a crucial surrender occurs. Was it their cunning, or your own yearning for ease that forged the first link in the chain? They learn to speak in a voice that echoes your own unspoken frustrations, to frame their crude ambitions as the fulfillment of your hidden desires. Their apparent simplicity is not a lack of sophistication, but a carefully tuned instrument designed to resonate with the part of you that distrusts complexity, that yearns for a champion who tells it like it is. But who precisely is defining what it is, and whose script are they truly reading from? Thus, the first act of letting unfolds. You allow them to shrink the vast, intricate world into a manageable, albeit distorted, miniature. You permit them to define the terms of engagement, to narrow the spectrum of acceptable thought, until their simplistic worldview begins to feel like the only sensible one. And in this curated reality, their power takes root, watered by your tacit acceptance of their comforting, constricting frame. Now let us turn the mirror upon you, for these figures who seem to stumble into power are often nothing more than reflections, albeit distorted, of the desires you harbor and the validations you seek. They learn to sense what you wish to see in a leader, what you long to believe about yourself, and they offer that image back to you, gift-wrapped in apparent sincerity. Is it their insight or your own reflection you find so captivating? Observe the masterstroke of their flattery, often so subtle it feels like genuine understanding. They might not praise your virtues directly, but instead embody a caricature of commonness that makes your own ordinary life feel heroic by comparison, or your intellectual pretensions seem like true wisdom. They create a space where your biases are affirmed, your resentments validated, and your ego gently stroked until it purrs with contentment, entirely oblivious to the leash being quietly fastened. And what of their celebrated authenticity, often rooted in their very visible flaws, their public gaffes, their refusal of polish? Does this not make you lower your guard, to see them as less calculating, more real than those who meticulously craft their every word? This perceived lack of artifice is perhaps their greatest artifice, convincing you that what you see is all there is, that no hidden depths, no concealed ambitions lie beneath the surface of the amiable or blustering fool. They tap into that deep human yearning to belong, to be part of something larger than oneself, a collective voice, a rising tide. The fool at the helm of such a movement often matters less than the feeling of unity itself, the intoxicating sense of shared purpose, even if that purpose remains vaguely defined or ultimately self-serving for the one at its head. Are you following a principle, or are you merely swept along by the current, afraid to be left behind on the shore? And so, the second act of letting transpires. You allow your need for validation, your desire for a comforting reflection, to cloud your judgment. You permit the illusion of kinship, the carefully constructed performance of one of us, to overshadow the glaring signs of incompetence or manipulation. You embrace the reflection, forgetting that a mirror, by its very nature, only shows what is placed before it, or what it is angled to reveal. Consider now the most potent weapon in their unassuming arsenal, your consistent, almost contemptuous underestimation of their capacity. The label fool, once bestowed, becomes a cloak of invisibility for their true intentions. Your laughter, your dismissal, your certainty of their ineptitude, these are the very elements that pave their path to the top. For who guards vigilantly against an enemy they believe to be a harmless buffoon? They do not need to outwit the astute or overpower the strong in a direct confrontation. Their strategy is one of subtle erosion, of moving through the cracks created by your inattention and your condescension. While you are busy admiring the intricate stratagems of serious contenders, the fool is amassing influence in the overlooked corners, their progress dismissed as anomaly or luck until it is too late to ignore. This very underestimation grants them a license that others can only dream of. They can make outrageous statements, commit blatant errors, and violate sacred norms, yet face curiously muted consequences. What can one expect from a fool, you might ask, shrugging your shoulders? And in that shrug, in that lowering of standards, you grant them impunity, allowing them to normalize the unacceptable, one seemingly clumsy step at a time. Imagine a fortress. The main gates are heavily guarded, every approach scrutinized, but the fool does not lay siege. Instead, they are willingly invited in, perhaps as court jester, to entertain, to amuse. And while you are captivated by the performance, who notices them quietly mapping the corridors, learning the routines, understanding the vulnerabilities left exposed by your confident dismissal of their threat? This, then, is the third act of letting. You permit your own intellectual vanity, your comfortable assurance of their harmlessness, to become their greatest shield. You allow them to operate beneath your threshold of serious concern, mistaking their calculated crudeness for genuine lack of capacity. And while you watch for complex threats from sophisticated adversaries, the fool simply walks through the door you left unlocked and unguarded. Let us now explore the peculiar magnetism of chaos, the strange allure of disruption that these figures often embody and sometimes deliberately cultivate. In a world that can feel too ordered, too predictable, or too stagnant, does not a part of you, however small, thrill to the tremor of the earthquake, the shattering of old structures? The fool who brings chaos often taps into this hidden societal yearning for a reset, a clearing of the board. They are, in many ways, the ultimate showmen, understanding instinctively that the crowd craves spectacle more than substance, entertainment more than effective governance. While you are mesmerized by their antics, by the constant drama they generate, by the outrage or amusement they provoke, the actual levers of power are being manipulated, often quietly, often by hands other than their own, in the ensuing confusion. Are you watching the magician's hand, or the distracting flourish of his cape? Your very human fatigue with boring competence, with the slow, incremental work of genuine progress, becomes their ally. They offer you the intoxicating rush of the unpredictable, the emotional roller coaster of constant crisis and resolution. And in that state of heightened emotional arousal, is there not a temptation to abandon the dry dictates of reason for the visceral thrill of the moment, to cheer for the one who makes the loudest noise, regardless of the tune? They master the art of emotional contagion, bypassing the sentinels of your rational mind. They speak not to your intellect, but to your fears, your resentments, your tribal loyalties. You become reactive, caught in a cycle of outrage and affirmation, your capacity for independent thought steadily eroded by the constant barrage of emotionally charged stimuli. Are you thinking, or are you merely feeling what they intend for you to feel? Herein lies the fourth act of letting. You allow your appetite for diversion, your craving for emotional intensity, and your weariness with the mundane to make you a willing audience for their destructive theater. You trade the hard work of discernment for the easy consumption of spectacle, forgetting that while the show might be entertaining, the consequences of the actions taken behind the curtain are deadly serious and all too real. And so we arrive at the precipice where vigilance erodes, and the once unthinkable begins its insidious creep into the realm of the accepted. Repeated exposure to the fool's reign, to their pronouncements, to their peculiar brand of leadership does not always breed contempt. Often it breeds a strange kind of familiarity, a dulling of the senses, a gradual shifting of your own internal goalposts of what is tolerable. It is the quiet tragedy of the slowly heating water, is it not? Each incremental rise in temperature is so small, so barely perceptible, that the alarm is never sounded. You adapt, you adjust, you rationalize. What was once an outrage becomes a regrettable norm. What was once a disqualifying flaw becomes an eccentric quirk. And who is to say at any given moment precisely when the water became too hot to bear? They are adept at implicating you in their narrative, however subtly. Your silence in the face of their transgressions is framed as tacit approval. Your desire for a quiet life, your unwillingness to engage in constant conflict, is portrayed as support. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, you are woven into the fabric of their power, not as an active conspirator, but as a passive enabler whose very inaction strengthens their hold. There comes a point, a quiet, unmarked moment, when your continued tolerance, your weary sigh of resignation, your decision that it's not worth the fight, becomes the final, unspoken permission. It is the abdication not of a formal vote, but of an inner conviction, the surrender of your own agency in the face of what seems like an overwhelming or inevitable tide. But was it ever truly inevitable? Or did it simply become so when enough individuals decided it was? This is the ultimate, most profound act of letting. You allow your own cynicism, your sense of powerlessness, or even your secret desire for a strong hand to guide you, to become the chains that bind you. You forget that the architecture of power, however imposing it may seem, rests always upon the foundation of consent, active or passive, coerced or freely given. And the most potent trick of all is making you believe that your individual consent or its withdrawal no longer matters. And so the curtain falls not on their play, but perhaps on a certain kind of blindness within our own gaze. The fool's ascent, as we have seen, is rarely a solo performance. It is a symphony of misdirection, yes, but also one of quiet permissions, of overlooked surrenders, of spaces within your own expectations that they have learned to occupy with such unnerving precision. The echo you hear is not just their voice, but the resonance of your own choices. The most unsettling trick, then, is not the one performed upon the public stage, but the one that unfolds within the private theater of your mind. The yearning for simplicity, the comfort of validation, the subtle flattery that disarms your judgment, the fatal miscalculation born of your own dismissal, these are not their inventions, but the very human terrain upon which their empires are so often built. The letting begins as a whisper inside, long before it manifests as a shout in the world. You have now glimpsed behind the painted screen, witnessed how the strings are pulled, how the illusion of strength can be crafted from the very fabric of perceived weakness, amplified by your underestimation. This understanding is not a condemnation, but an illumination. The world is indeed a stage, but you are not merely an audience member passively observing the drama. You are, in every moment of attention or neglect, shaping the scene, influencing the plot, even if you were never handed a formal script. To see this intricate dance, to recognize the patterns of manipulation and the pathways of your own susceptibility, is to carry both a new weight and a new pair of wings. The world may no longer appear as it once did. The pronouncements of the powerful, the antics of the audacious, will now pass through a different filter. This clarity is a burden, for ignorance offers a certain bliss, but it is also the first step towards a more authentic power, the power to choose your responses rather than having them chosen for you. And here lies the true, unspoken secret, the one that trembles beneath the surface of all we have explored. The most formidable throne of any fool is built not upon their intrinsic strength, but upon the forgotten foundations of your own surrendered attention, your unvoiced dissent, your willingness to believe you are powerless. The ultimate sleight of hand is convincing you that your individual perception, your inner stance, holds no sway in the grand theater of the world. If this journey has ignited a spark within, a desire to reclaim that attention, to cultivate that discernment, then let this not be an end, but a beginning. Subscribe and join us as we continue to explore the shadowed landscapes of power and human nature. Share your own reflections in the comments below. What part of this intricate play do you now see with new eyes? And if this perspective is one you believe others should hold, pass this message onward. for the clearest sight is often found when shared among those who dare to look.